Welcome to Martha Family Secrets Stories. I am Claire. I'm 32 years old. And 3 weeks ago, at my father's retirement party, he did something in front of 200 people that made me decide to erase myself from this family permanently. Picture this. A glittering country club ballroom. 200 guests in designer suits and cocktail dresses. Champagne flowing like it costs nothing. My father standing on stage, microphone in hand, introducing his family one by one. And when he got to me, he smiled that smile I had seen 1,000 times before. The one that looked warm to everyone else but cut straight through me like cold glass. And this, he said into the microphone, is my daughter Claire. No degree, no future, just freeloads off the family. 200 people laughed. Real laughter. And I sat there and I did not flinch. I did not cry. I did not look away. I just smiled, raised my champagne glass slowly, and said loud enough for every microphone in that room to catch it, "Cheers, everyone. This is the last time any of you will ever see me." Then I walked out. The room went completely silent. What happened next is what I'm here to tell you. But before I go any further, please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. It means more to me than I can explain. My name is Claire Evans. I'm 32 years old. I run a consulting firm in Boston. And this is the story of how a family that spent 12 years making me feel invisible finally saw me, and how it was already too late. Let me take you back. 12 years. To the day my future was taken from me by the people who were supposed to protect it. The Evans family of Fairfield, Connecticut. That's how we were known. Upper middle class, respectable, polished. My father, Richard Evans, was CEO of a mid-size logistics company. We had a 6-bedroom colonial on 2 acres, a Mercedes in the driveway, a membership at the most exclusive country club in the county. From the outside we looked perfect. My mother died when I was 8. Cancer. Quick and brutal. I barely remember her face without looking at photographs, but I remember her hands. Soft. Always reaching for mine. 2 years later, my father remarried. Her name was Sandra. She came with a son from her first marriage, Daniel, 3 years older than me. And within months, they were not just part of our family. They were the family. I became furniture. Not in any dramatic, obvious way. No cruel stepmother from a fairy tale. Just invisibility. Daniel got praised for his grades. Mine were noted and forgotten. Daniel got a new car at 16. I got his hand-me-down. Daniel was the future of the company. I was also there. My father never shouted at me. Never. He just looked through me like I was a window he was trying to see past. And the worst part is that as a little girl I kept trying to be the thing worth seeing. I kept trying. But there was one person who always saw me. My grandmother, Margaret Evans. My father's own mother. She would call me every single Sunday without fail. Ask about my classes, my friends, my dreams. She would say, "You remind me of myself at your age, Claire. Underestimated. But I see you." She left me something when she died. Something no one in the family knew about. But I am getting ahead of myself. In that family, I learned to be invisible. What I didn't understand then was that invisibility would become my greatest weapon. I was 20 years old. Sophomore year at university. Business major. 3.8 GPA. I had a scholarship application sitting on my desk for a summer program in London. I had plans. I had a future mapped out in my head with the careful precision of someone who grew up knowing they would have to fight for every inch. My father called me home on a Wednesday. "Family meeting," he said. Those 2 words had never once meant anything good. I found him in his study. Mahogany desk. Leather chair. Walls covered in awards and framed certificates. Sandra stood beside him, one hand on his shoulder. United. decided. Claire, he began, not looking up from his papers. We need to make some sacrifices as a family. Daniel has been accepted into a top MBA program. It's an extraordinary opportunity. My heart rate didn't change. I already knew where this was going. We can't afford both your tuition and his program fees, he continued. So we've decided you'll take a break from school. Just for now. Daniel's career will benefit the whole family in the long run. Sandra nodded, her voice honey-sweet. A girl doesn't need an MBA to have a good life, Claire. You'll find a lovely husband someday. That's what really matters in the end. I sat there frozen. Not because I was surprised. I had spent 12 years learning not to be surprised by these people. But because some small, foolish, stubborn part of me had still hoped. Still believed that maybe this time they would choose me. You said you'd support my education, I heard myself say. My own voice sounded far away. You promised Mom before she died. My father's jaw tightened. Circumstances change. When the company stabilizes, I'll make it up to you. He never did. What I found out later through a cousin who said too much at a Christmas dinner was that there was money. There was always money. They simply chose not to spend it on me. I didn't argue that day. I just nodded. But inside something hardened. Something quiet and cold and absolutely certain. This was the last time I would let anyone else decide my worth. I moved to Boston with $2,000 in savings and a suitcase of clothes that no longer fit the life I was leaving behind. My first apartment was 400 square feet above a laundromat. The radiator clanked all night. The walls were thin enough to hear my neighbor's television. I ate noodles for dinner and day-old pastries from the cafe where I worked the morning shift. I was 20 years old and I was starting from nothing. But here is what nobody tells you about starting from nothing. You cannot fall any further. I got a job as an administrative assistant at a small logistics company. Entry level, minimum wage, but it had benefits. The owner, a blunt man named Walter Barnes, saw something in me that my family never once looked for. You've got a mind, Claire, he told me one afternoon. Use it. So I did. I stayed late. I learned every system, every process. I took free online courses at night. Supply chain management. Operations. Business fundamentals. The internet became my university and I devoured everything. For years after leaving Connecticut, I had saved enough to start my own consulting firm. Meridian Consulting. Just me, a laptop, and a rented desk in a shared workspace. I kept my name off everything public. No professional profiles, no press announcements. All business went through the company name and my lawyer. Because I knew my family. If they ever found out I was building something, they would find a way to take credit for it or tear it down. And I was not going to give them the chance to do either. Some people build empires to prove themselves. I built mine in silence, because silence was the only language my family had ever taught me. Then 2 years ago, my grandmother Margaret died. I flew to Connecticut for the funeral. Sat in the back pew. Watched my father deliver a eulogy about a remarkable woman who dedicated her life to family. The irony was so thick I could barely breathe through it. 3 days later, my phone rang. A Boston number I didn't recognize. I answered. Miss Evans, my name is Eleanor Smith. I'm calling on behalf of your grandmother's separate estate. I nearly dropped the phone. She established a trust fund in your name 8 years ago with explicit instructions that no other family member be informed of its existence. The trust contained $800,000. And there was a letter. Eleanor read it to me over the phone and I sat in my kitchen in Boston and I wept. Not the polished kind of crying. The kind that comes from somewhere so deep you didn't even know it was still there. My dearest Claire, Eleanor read. I know what they did to you. I know about the tuition, the promises, all of it. I argued with your father until I had no words left. He wouldn't listen. He never does. This money is yours. No strings, no conditions. Use it to build the life you deserve, the life they tried to take from you. Remember what I always told you. Don't let anyone tell you that you are not worthy. When they finally see your worth, it will be too late for them. I believe in you. I always have. All my love, Grandma Margaret. I read that letter so many times the paper wore soft at the folds. I used part of that money to expand Meridian Consulting. The rest I kept as security for a day I hoped would never come but always somehow knew might. That day came 3 weeks ago. But before I tell you what happened at that retirement party, there is one more thing you need to know. One of Meridian's biggest clients was Evans Logistics, my father's company. They had signed a 5-year service contract with us 3 years ago. We handled their route optimization, warehouse management, carrier negotiations, everything. The contract was worth roughly 40% of their annual operational savings. My father had no idea. All communications went through my team. All contracts were signed by my operations director. The few times Richard Evans had praised Meridian Consulting at industry events, praised us publicly, called us brilliant, called us the backbone of his operations, he had been praising his own daughter's work. The daughter he had told everyone was worthless. He really had no idea. Then I received the invitation. Gold embossed lettering on cream cardstock. Richard Evans requests the pleasure of your company at his retirement celebration. I almost threw it straight in the bin. Almost. But I thought about Grandma Margaret. About 12 years of silence. About every promise broken and every door shut in my face. And I thought, I will go. Not because I want anything from him. Not because I hope things have changed. I will go because I know with complete certainty that my father will do something unforgivable that night. And when he does, I want to be there to say goodbye on my own terms. I just didn't know how right I would be. I want to stop here for a second because I know some of you watching this have felt this exact thing. That particular exhaustion of being the one who is always overlooked by the people who are supposed to love you most. Of showing up early and working hard and still being invisible. If that is you, I want you to know I see you. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. Tell me if any of this feels familiar. Because knowing I'm not alone in this, that has kept me going on the hardest nights. And stay with me. Because what happened inside that ballroom, what my father said into that microphone, and what I did next, changes everything. The Fairfield Country Club had not changed in 30 years. Same crystal chandeliers. Same self-important valet service. Same crowd of old money and new ambition pretending they belong in the same room. I wore a black dress. Simple, elegant, expensive. My grandmother's pearl earrings. A watch I had bought myself on the 5th anniversary of Meridian. Everything I owned that night I had earned with my own hands, and that mattered to me more than any label ever could. Sandra intercepted me at the entrance. She had aged, but her smile had not. Still that perfectly constructed mask of warmth, with something colder running just underneath it. Her eyes did a quick inventory of my outfit before she spoke. Claire, you came. Her tone managed to be simultaneously pleased and slightly inconvenienced. Your father wasn't sure you'd have something appropriate to wear. I smiled. How thoughtful of him to worry. Inside, 200 guests mingled beneath the crystal light. The business community of Connecticut in its finest clothes. Bankers, lawyers, executives, politicians. I recognized faces from my father's old dinner parties when I was a child. None of them recognized me. Daniel swept past with a companion on his arm, not even glancing in my direction. He was telling someone about his vision for the company's future. Classic Daniel. All confidence, no substance. I found my seat assignment. Table 14. The far corner near the service entrance. Guests of the family I had never met. Not the family table. Not even close. I noted it and I sat down. A waiter offered champagne. I took a glass and from my corner I watched. Because I had learned a long time ago that the best information comes from staying quiet and keeping your ears open. My father was holding court near the bar, surrounded by associates. Then I heard it. He was speaking to a silver-haired man I recognized as a major figure in the shipping industry. Meridian Consulting has been transformative for us, my father was saying. They are the backbone of our entire operation. Whoever runs that company is a genius. The other man nodded. I've been trying to get a meeting with them for months. Very private operation. Do you know who is behind it? My father shrugged with the casual confidence of a man who has never had to look too closely at the things that hold him up. Never met them personally. Everything goes through their legal team. Honestly, I don't care who they are as long as they keep delivering. I took a sip of champagne to cover my smile. Then my phone buzzed. My operations director. Contract renewal documents from Evans Logistics arrived today. They want another 5 years. Waiting on your decision. I typed back slowly. I will have an answer by end of week. What my father didn't know was that Meridian's contract with his company was coming up for renewal. If we walked away, Evans Logistics would lose 40% of their operational efficiency within 60 days. In logistics, that is not a difficulty. That is a collapse. I hadn't decided what to do yet. But tonight would determine everything. I went to the bar for another drink and found the extended family firing squad waiting for me. Sandra's sister found me first. Her face moved through surprise, then pity, then condescension in about half a second. Claire, oh my goodness. I almost didn't recognize you. She looked me up and down with that particular kind of smile that is designed to feel like a compliment but lands like a small blade. You look well. Still up in Boston doing your little consulting thing. Supply chain management, I said. Yes. Oh, how lovely. The way she said it made it sound like I had told her I collected bottle caps. Are you seeing anyone? Your father mentioned you're still single. 32 now, isn't it? Time really does fly. Before I could say a word, Sandra's brother joined in. Richard was just telling me you're still finding your feet. Nothing wrong with being a late bloomer. Not everyone is built for traditional success. I understood then with cold, absolute clarity what had happened. My father had briefed them. He had given them talking points about the family disappointment, set the narrative carefully before I even walked through the door. Richard mentioned you went through some emotional difficulties after leaving school, Sandra's sister continued, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Mental health troubles. So brave of you to come tonight despite everything. I felt my grip tighten on my champagne glass. Not from hurt. I was long past hurt. From the sheer audacity of it. I appreciate the concern, I said, keeping my voice perfectly level. But I am doing very well, actually. Better than I have ever been. They exchanged glances. The kind that says, poor thing doesn't even know how far she has fallen. I excused myself before I said something I would regret. But something was forming in my mind. Cold and clear and inevitable. Daniel found me on the terrace overlooking the golf course. Well, well. His voice came from behind me, heavy with contempt. The prodigal daughter returns. I didn't turn around. Daniel. He stepped beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Dad's about to give his speech. Wanted to make sure you weren't planning any dramatic scenes. Why would I? Because you've always been jealous. He said it like he was stating an established fact. The way you disappeared to Boston like some wounded animal after the tuition decision. You've never gotten over it. Now I turned. I looked at my stepbrother in his expensive suit, his watch, his carefully styled hair, this man who had taken everything that should have been mine and built a comfortable life on it. Is that what you tell yourself? I said quietly. His eyes hardened. I heard you started some little company up there. Playing businesswoman. He laughed, short and dismissive. How long before it fails? 6 months? A year? Then you'll come crawling back begging Dad for help. I could have told him right then. About Meridian, about the contract, about how his precious company's performance was built on the work of the sister he had written off. But some revelations need the right stage. You can believe whatever makes you feel better, Daniel, I said. But I will promise you this. After tonight, you are going to wish you had treated me very differently. His laugh followed me inside. Dismissive. Arrogant. He had absolutely no idea what was coming. The ballroom lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. My father climbed the steps to thunderous applause. The conquering hero of Connecticut logistics taking his final bow. He began his speech. Thanked his partners, his employees, his mentors. Took credit for everything. Then came the family segment. I couldn't have done any of this without my incredible wife, Sandra. He gestured to her table. 30 years of patience and grace. You are a saint. More applause. Sandra dabbed at her eyes perfectly on cue. And my son Daniel, who will be taking over as CEO come January. The future of Evans Logistics. I couldn't be prouder. Standing ovation. Daniel rose and waved. The picture of inherited success. Then my father's eyes found me in my corner. And something shifted in his expression. Something mean, small, and deliberate. And of course, he said, my daughter Claire. The spotlight swung to my table. I felt 200 pairs of eyes turn toward me. No degree. No real career. Just freeloads off the family. He paused, letting the silence build for his punchline. But hey, at least she showed up tonight. Maybe someday she'll find a wealthy husband to take care of her. The room erupted in laughter. Real, full, comfortable laughter. The kind that comes from people who think they are in on a joke without realizing they are watching cruelty dressed up as comedy. I sat perfectly still. Hands in my lap. Face completely neutral. The way I looked when a patient's family used to shout at me in the years I worked night shifts. Calm. Present. Absorbing everything. Then I stood up. The room quieted as I rose. I could feel every eye shifting toward me. Some curious, some pitying, some already bracing to witness a breakdown. The unstable daughter finally cracking under her father's harmless roast. I picked up my champagne glass. Slowly. Deliberately. My father's smile faltered just slightly. He had not expected me to react. I never had before. I was supposed to sit there and absorb it, the way I always absorbed everything they gave me. I raised the glass toward him. Congratulations on your retirement, Dad. My voice was clear and steady and loud enough for every microphone in the room. 40 years in business. Quite an achievement. I paused. You taught me a great deal about hard work. About sacrifice. About exactly what kind of loyalty family can expect from you. The silence was total now. I could hear someone's ice clinking 3 tables away. So here's to you. I lifted my glass higher. Cheers. This is the last time any of you will see me. I set the glass down without drinking. Picked up my bag. Turned. And walked toward the exit. My heels clicked against the hardwood floor, the only sound in that entire cavernous room. I didn't rush. I didn't run. I walked. Spine straight. Head high. Behind me, silence. Complete. Devastating. Absolute. Someone gasped. Someone whispered something I couldn't hear. Mostly there was just the echo of my footsteps and 200 people trying to process what they had just witnessed. The daughter who was supposed to be broken had just walked out on her own terms. I pushed through the double doors and stepped into the cool September night. And for the first time in 12 years, I could breathe. I want to pause here for a moment and step outside the story because right now you are probably feeling exactly what I felt standing in that car park with the sound of my own footsteps still ringing in my ears. That combination of grief and freedom that hits you all at once when you finally do the thing you have been afraid to do for years. I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a room where someone publicly humiliated you and you had to decide in real time whether to fight back or walk away? What did you do? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And stay with me. Because what happened when Sandra came running out of those doors after me, and what I did in the weeks that followed, is where this story really begins. I was almost to my car when I heard the footsteps behind me. Claire. Claire, stop right there. Sandra's voice, shrill and furious, all that careful composure cracked right down the middle. I kept walking. She grabbed my arm, spinning me around. Her face was flushed beneath the country club lights. Do you have any idea what you just did? You humiliated your father in front of everyone who matters to him. I looked at her hand on my arm until she removed it. I humiliated him, I said quietly. I think you have that backwards. My father appeared behind her. His face was a thundercloud. He was aware of the windows, aware of 200 guests who were probably watching from inside, and I could see him calculating, the way he always calculated, how to manage the scene without losing face. Get back inside, he said, his voice low. Apologize. Now. No. The words sat in the air between us. This is not a negotiation, Claire. I am your father. You're telling me what, exactly? I cut him off. Something I had never done once in my entire life. That I should go back in there and let you keep using me as your punchline? That I should smile while you tell 200 people that I am worthless and have no future? It was a joke. It was the truth of how you see me. And I am done pretending otherwise. I opened my car door. My father stepped forward. If you leave now, you are done. Do you understand me? No more family. No more support. Nothing. And there it was. The threat he had been holding over me my whole life. The invisible leash. Dad. I looked at him steadily. You cut me off 12 years ago. You just didn't have the courage to say it out loud until tonight. I slid into the driver's seat. Tonight I'm saying it for both of us. Goodbye. I started the engine and I drove away. I pulled into a rest stop about 20 minutes outside Fairfield. Sat in the dark with the engine idling and my hands still on the wheel. For a long moment I just breathed. In. Out. In. Out. I had just walked away from my family. From every last thread of hope that things might someday be different. And instead of falling apart I just felt very, very still. The morning after the party I woke up in my Boston apartment feeling lighter than I had in years. But I knew it was not over. Families like mine do not simply let things go. They control the narrative. They make the other person the villain. They manage the story. And sure enough, within 48 hours the texts started arriving. Not from my father. He was too proud for that. But from cousins, aunts, family friends, people I had not spoken to in years who were suddenly deeply concerned about my well-being. Claire, I heard about the party. Your dad says you're struggling. Do you need help? Susan told me you had some kind of episode. We're all worried about you. Your father loves you. He just wants what's best. Maybe you should apologize and come home. There it was. Poor Claire, unstable, jealous, had some kind of breakdown at the party. Richard Evans, patient loving father, doing his best with a troubled daughter. I didn't respond to any of them. Then came the more interesting call. A Connecticut number I didn't recognize. I answered. Miss Evans, this is James Crawford. I'm a partner at Evans Logistics. His voice was polished and professionally warm. I'm calling on behalf of Richard. He'd like to discuss mending fences. And between us, there's been some concerning chatter internally about your possible connection to certain business partners. Probably nothing. but Richard thought it would be good to clear the air. I went very still. They were fishing. They were close. What kind of chatter? I asked, keeping my voice completely neutral. Something about Meridian Consulting. Someone thought they had seen you at their offices at some point. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. I'm not sure what you're referring to, I said. But please tell my father I have nothing to discuss with him. I hung up. They were closer than I had realized. It was time to stop waiting. I had learned later exactly what was happening inside my father's boardroom during those weeks. He had walked into what should have been a routine quarterly meeting. His CFO looked like he had seen something terrible. We have a problem with Meridian Consulting, the CFO said, sliding a folder across the table. Their contract is up for renewal. They haven't responded to our extension offer. We've tried 3 times. My father frowned. Increase the terms. Send another offer. Sir, Meridian Consulting is an extremely private organization. Everything has always gone through intermediaries. No one at this company has ever actually met their ownership. A long silence. If they walk away, the CFO continued, we lose 40% of our operational efficiency within 60 days. In this market, finding a replacement would take 18 months minimum. My father stared at the folder. Something was pulling at him. The timing. The silence. The fact that this was all happening right after that night. Find out who owns that company, he said. I want a name by end of week. What he didn't know was that the name he was looking for was already on his family tree. Thursday evening, Sandra called. Honey and sugar. The performance of a lifetime. I've been so worried about you, sweetheart. About the party, your father feels absolutely terrible. He didn't mean what he said. You know how he gets when he's nervous. He exaggerates. He said I had no future and no worth in front of 200 people. He was anxious, trying to be funny. Why don't you come home this weekend? Just the 4 of us. Clear the air. Start fresh. I could picture her in that pristine living room, rehearsing this conversation, planning which buttons to press, the concerned mother, the bridge builder, the peacemaker. Does Dad want to apologize? I asked. A slight hesitation. He wants to move forward. That's what matters. So no apology. Claire, don't be difficult. We're trying to help you. Help me. Now. I laughed, and it was not a warm sound. Sandra, you spent 22 years making sure I knew I wasn't really part of this family. Why are you calling to help me now? Another pause. Longer. I think we both know there is more going on here than just family drama, she said, her voice dropping its warmth entirely. Whatever you are planning, it would be better for everyone if you came home and talked this through. No. I hung up. They knew something. They just didn't yet know how much to be afraid of. The next morning I drove to Eleanor Smith's office in downtown Boston. Eleanor had been my grandmother's lawyer, and since the trust had become mine, she had become mine too. Her office was glass and steel with views of the Boston skyline. The kind of place where serious, careful things happen. I've been expecting you, she said when I walked in. This is about Evan's logistics. She spread documents across the desk. The Meridian contract with every clause and exit provision. The trust fund papers. The company incorporation documents. Your contract includes a 30-day termination notice, Eleanor said, pointing to the clause. You can end the agreement for any reason without penalty. And your grandmother's trust is completely separate from the Evans family estate. Richard has no claim to any of it, even if he tries. She looked at me over her glasses. Margaret made absolutely certain of that. I stared at the papers. Everything legal. Everything in order. Every protection my grandmother had quietly built around me from the grave. What did she say when she set up the trust? I asked. About all of this? Eleanor smiled, and it was a sad, warm smile. She said that one day Claire is going to need leverage. And when that day comes, I want her to have it. The tears came then. Ah. The quiet, deep kind that you can't stop once they start. My grandmother had known. She had seen everything and she had protected me even from a distance, even from the end of her life. She also said something else, Eleanor added. Tell her not to be cruel about it. Just be honest. Sometimes the truth is punishment enough. I nodded. The truth it was. I spent all of Sunday writing my father's letter. Not the official termination notice. My operations director handled that. I wrote the personal one. The honest one. 7 drafts. The first was too angry, pages of every wound catalogued and condemned. The second was too cold. The third was too desperate. The final version was simple and clean and factual. Dear Dad. You said I had no future. You told 200 people I was worthless. I want you to know something. The company you called the backbone of Evans Logistics, Meridian Consulting, is mine. I built it. I own it. For 3 years, the daughter you dismissed has been a cornerstone of your business success. I am ending our contract not as revenge, but as a boundary. Grandma Margaret left me a trust fund you never knew existed. She saw what you couldn't. That I was worth investing in. Everything I have, I built myself, with her faith and without your support. I don't need you to apologize. I don't need you to understand. I just need you to know that I am not what you said I was. I never was. Don't contact me again. Claire Margaret Evans. I included my middle name deliberately. The name I had added 3 years earlier in honor of the only person in my family who had ever believed in me. Monday. 9 in the morning. I sent it. I want to stop here because even reading that letter back to myself now makes my chest do something complicated. All those years of being made to feel small, reduced to a punchline, invisible at her own family's table, and here she is on a Sunday afternoon writing 5 clean, honest paragraphs that are about to shake the entire foundation of what her father built. Would you have sent it? Or would you have kept the contract and stayed silent? Tell me in the comments. Because I genuinely go back and forth even now about whether I made the right call. Stay with me. Because what happened when that package arrived at Evans Logistics headquarters at 9 in the morning on Monday, what the next 48 hours looked like, that is the part of this story that still makes my hands shake a little when I think about it. Monday morning, 9 o'clock. Courier confirmation on my phone. The package had arrived at Evans Logistics headquarters. Signed for by my father's executive assistant. I sat in my office and watched my phone. 10:15. Missed call from Richard Evans. 10:17. Missed call from Richard Evans. 10:23. Missed call from Daniel Evans. 10:31. Missed call from Sandra Evans. 10:45. Missed call from Richard Evans. 11:02. Text. Call me now. 11:15. Text from Daniel. What the hell is this? Call us. 11:34. Text from Sandra. This is not funny. Pick up your phone. By noon I had 12 missed calls, 8 text messages, and 2 voicemails I did not listen to. I responded to none of them. I had waited 12 years for this moment. They could wait a few more hours. At 2 in the afternoon my assistant knocked. Miss Evans, there's a family here. They say it's urgent. They're in the lobby. So they had driven to Boston. 5 hours of highway and panic just to confront me in person. I took a breath. Checked my reflection in the window. Straightened my blazer. Send them to conference room B, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Conference room B had glass walls. I had chosen it deliberately. My 15 employees could see inside, though they couldn't hear. Not to humiliate anyone. To ensure the meeting stayed civil. My presence in that room, with my team visible through the glass, was the quietest possible reminder of exactly where we were. My father, Sandra, and Daniel stood clustered near the window when I entered. They had never seen Boston from this angle before. From my domain. My territory. My floor. My father turned when I walked in. His face was gray. He looked older than I had ever seen him look. Like 12 years had happened all at once overnight. Claire. His voice cracked on my name. Hello, Dad. Sandra. Daniel. I took a seat at the head of the conference table. I assume you received my letter. Your letter? Daniel stepped forward, jabbing a finger in my direction. You can't just. Sit down, Daniel. My voice was quiet, but there was nothing uncertain in it. I will not discuss anything with someone yelling across a room. He looked at my father. My father nodded once, sharply. They sat. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, my father leaned forward. This is some kind of misunderstanding. Meridian Consulting. You can't possibly. I built it. I own it. I have run it for 7 years. I slid a folder across the table. Company registration. Tax filings. 7 years of financial statements. 3 years ago your company signed a contract with mine. You praised our work at industry events. You called us the backbone of your operations. You just didn't know you were praising me. Sandra's face had gone the color of old paper. But you don't have a degree. You were just a what, Sandra? A disappointment? A girl who just needed to find the right husband? I shook my head. I was a 20-year-old told to sacrifice her future. I built something anyway. Without any of you. Silence. My father stared at the documents like they might dissolve if he looked hard enough. Then he said, okay. His voice strained. The corporate composure cracking in real time. I apologize. For the party. For what I said. Is that what you want? I'm sorry. Now can we talk about the contract? You're sorry because you need something from me. That is not an apology. For God's sake, Claire. Daniel slammed his palm on the table. Do you know what happens if you pull this contract? Do you know how many jobs are at stake? This is not just about you and Dad. This is about people's livelihoods. It is a business decision. A clean one, within the terms we both agreed to. He was standing now. You've been planning this for years. Waiting to destroy us. This is calculated and it is sick. I planned nothing. I kept my voice level and even. I built a company. Your company chose to become dependent on mine. That is not my fault. You could have told us, Sandra said, her voice tight and high. You could have said something. When? When you told me I didn't need an education because I would find a husband someday. When you spread to every family member that I had mental health problems. When exactly was the right moment, Sandra? She had no answer. I turned to my father. Do you want to know the worst part? I was not planning any of this. I was going to keep the contract going. I had no intention of using it against you. But then you stood in front of 200 people on a microphone and told them I was worthless. That I had no future. That I was a charity case. I paused. You chose this. Not me. My father's jaw worked. For just a moment, just a fraction of a second, I thought I saw something in his eyes. Recognition. The beginning of real understanding. Then it was gone. What do you want? He asked flatly. Nothing you can give me. There must be something. You're not listening. I don't want anything from you. I never did. I just want you to know the truth. A long silence. Fine. My father's voice went cold. The vulnerability shuddered away. If that's how you want to play this, you walk away from this family. No inheritance. Nothing. I almost laughed. The absurdity of it. The absolute breathtaking absurdity. Dad. You cut me off at 20 years old. What inheritance are you threatening to remove? I can make things difficult for you. I have lawyers. I have connections. On what grounds? Every document is legal. Every contract was signed in good faith. There is nothing here to challenge and we both know it. Don't be so sure. Actually, I am completely sure. Because my lawyer, who was also Grandma Margaret's lawyer, has reviewed every possible angle. I let that land. You remember Eleanor Smith? Margaret chose her specifically because she knew you might try something like this one day. Sandra gasped. A quiet, involuntary sound. Margaret left me a trust fund. $800,000. Structured specifically so that you cannot touch a penny of it. She knew what kind of family she raised. That is why she protected me from it. My father's face went from red to white. She had no right. She had every right. It was her money. And she chose to give it to me. I stood. This meeting is over. Heather, Sandra began. Claire, I said. My name is Claire. Goodbye. I walked to the door. Then I stopped, one hand on the frame. One more thing. If any of you contact me again, calls, texts, showing up at my office, I will release every document, every email, every record of how this family has treated me. All of it is legally held. All of it is backed up. And all of it would make a very interesting story for the business press. I opened the door. My father rose slowly, like a man suddenly aware of his own age. Sandra clutched her handbag like a shield. Daniel looked at me with something entirely new in his eyes. Not contempt. Not arrogance. Fear. This isn't over, Daniel said. Yes, Daniel. It is. I looked at him steadily. I spent 12 years building a life you tried to convince me I could not have. I did it without your help, without your approval, without your permission. And I will continue to do it without any of you in my life. Sandra's lower lip trembled. We're family, Claire. Whatever has happened, we're family. We share a last name, Sandra. That's all we share. I am not asking for an apology. I am not asking for reconciliation. I am setting a boundary. Don't contact me. Don't mention me to your colleagues or your friends. Just let me go. My father stopped in front of me. We stood face to face for a long, quiet moment. You really hate us that much? He asked, barely above a whisper. No, Dad. I met his eyes and held them. I don't hate you. That's what you still don't understand. I just don't need you anymore. He had nothing to say to that. They walked out through the lobby past my team, who carefully pretended not to notice. The glass doors closed behind them. I went back to my desk and got back to work. And I know some of you are watching this thinking, that must have felt amazing. And some of you are thinking, that must have been the loneliest thing in the world. It was both. It was absolutely both at the same time, and I will not pretend otherwise. Stay with me. Because what happened in the months that followed, what came out about my mother's money, what my Uncle Robert told me on the phone one afternoon, and where everyone ended up, that is the part of this story that I think about every single day. 1 week after the confrontation in Conference Room B, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. I answered anyway. Claire. The voice was older. Rougher. Someone I hadn't heard in over a decade. It's Robert. Your uncle. Your father's brother. Robert had always been the family's quiet outlier. An artist. A dreamer. The one who didn't go into business. I hadn't spoken to him since my mother's funeral. I heard what happened at the party, he said. And at Richard's office. Word travels in that community. Okay. There's something I should have told you years ago. Something I was too much of a coward to say. I sat down slowly. I'm listening. When your father said the family couldn't afford both your tuition and Daniel's MBA fees, that was a lie. I know you figured that out eventually. But you don't know the whole truth. He exhaled. There was a specific fund, Claire. Your mother set it up before she died. For your education. Enough to cover 4 full years at any school in the country. The room tilted. Your father used it. All of it. Put it toward Daniel's MBA and then told you there was nothing available. I gripped the edge of my desk. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I was afraid of Richard. We all were. The whole family was. His voice cracked. Your mother wanted you to have choices, Claire. Real choices. And Richard took them from you. Margaret, your grandmother, she found out. That is why she set up the trust for you. She couldn't get your mother's money back. But she could make sure Richard never took anything else. I thought about the letter. I know what they did to you. I know about the tuition, the promises, all of it. She had known everything. From the very beginning. Why are you telling me now? I asked. Because it is time the truth came out. All of it. I wept. Not elegant, not controlled. Just properly, deeply wept. For the education that should have been mine. For the mother I barely remembered who had tried to protect my future from beyond her own life. For the little girl who had sat in that study and still hoped, even then, that her father would choose her. Ah. She had tried so hard to protect me. 2 months after I terminated the Meridian contract, the consequences became public. I was not monitoring Evan's logistics. I was genuinely trying to move forward with my life. But in the Connecticut business community, bad news travels fast. The company announced a 20% workforce reduction. 70 employees laid off. The press release blamed market conditions and strategic repositioning. But people who knew the industry understood what had happened. Their most critical consulting partner had walked away and they could not absorb the loss. Daniel, barely 3 months into his role as CEO, was already being questioned by the board. The vision he had announced with such confidence was crumbling under the weight of a dependency nobody had disclosed to him. My father came out of retirement to help manage the crisis. The triumphant exit he had planned, the legacy he had spent 40 years constructing, was coming apart. But the deeper damage was to reputation. Word spread. Not from me. I kept completely silent. But 200 people had watched my father humiliate his daughter at that party. And when those same 200 people began hearing that the daughter he had mocked was actually the cornerstone of his company's operation, the whispers started. Did you hear about Richard Evans? Mocked his own daughter at his retirement. Turns out she was the one keeping his company running. Always thought there was something off about that family. In Connecticut business circles, reputation is the only currency that actually matters. And Richard's was collapsing. A former colleague of my father's told me that at a recent industry dinner, Richard had sat largely alone. No one wanted to be seen closely associated with the man who had publicly dismissed the daughter who had secretly been his most important partner. I did not feel triumphant hearing this. I want to be honest about that because I think it matters. I just felt tired. And a little bit sad. Grandma Margaret had been right. Sometimes the truth is punishment enough. You do not have to do anything else. The truth does the work entirely on its own. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. 6 months after the confrontation, I sat in a therapist's office in Boston. Not because I was falling apart. Because I was finally ready to put myself back together properly. You don't seem like someone who needs this, my therapist said during our first session. Everyone needs this, I said. I'm just finally letting myself admit it. We talked about the invisibility. The years of being looked through. The strange specific grief of walking away from people who were supposed to love you. The weight of building success in silence because you could not risk anyone taking it from you before it was strong enough to stand. Do you regret what you did? She asked. No, I said. And I meant it completely. I regret that it had to happen. I don't regret protecting myself. Outside of therapy my life was good. Better than good. Meridian was thriving. We had replaced the Evans contract with 3 smaller clients, more diversified, more stable. I hired 4 new employees. We moved to a larger office with views of the harbor. I reconnected with Uncle Robert. We had dinner once a month. He told me real stories about my mother. She had been fierce, apparently. Stubborn. A fighter. She had argued with everyone to protect the people she loved. You're just like her, Robert said. She would be so proud of you. I still keep a photograph of Grandma Margaret on my desk. I visit her grave every month, leave flowers, tell her about my life. It feels strange and healing at the same time. Talking to a headstone. But I do it anyway. One spring morning I stood there in the quiet of the cemetery and I said, I did it, Grandma. I didn't let them define me. The wind moved through the trees. If I listened closely enough, I could almost hear her voice. I always knew you would, sweetheart. I always knew. My father still lives in Fairfield. I don't know the full details of his daily life and I don't ask. Daniel is still running Evans Logistics, though it is a smaller, quieter operation than it once was. Sandra is still Sandra. The family that made me invisible is still there, probably having their Sunday dinners, probably telling their version of the story to anyone who will listen. And me. I'm 32. I run a company with 15 people who depend on me and whose work I am genuinely proud of. I have lunch with people who ask real questions and listen to real answers. I have an apartment in Boston that is mine in a way no space has ever been mine before. I have a therapist, a best friend who tells me the truth, and a photograph of my grandmother on my desk to remind me every single morning where I came from and why it matters that I kept going. So here is what I want to leave you with. Your worth is not determined by a degree. It is not determined by your family's version of you. It is not determined by who believed in you or who tried to convince you that you were not worth believing in. Your worth is determined by what you build when nobody is watching. By who you become when everyone has counted you out. By the life you construct with your own hands out of whatever materials you are given. My father thought he was putting me in my place at that retirement party. What he actually did was set me free. I don't hate him. That is the part people struggle to understand when I tell this story. Hate takes energy. Hate keeps you chained to the thing that hurt you. I would rather spend that energy on work I believe in, on people who deserve it, on a life that is genuinely, completely mine. Boundaries are not walls. They are not cruelty. They are not selfishness. They are the clear and honest declaration of where your life begins and where someone else's damage must end. If you are in a family that makes you feel small, if you have people around you who see your potential as a threat rather than a gift, if you have ever been the one who was overlooked, dismissed, the invisible one at your own family's table, I see you. I have been you. And I promise you there is life on the other side of walking away. Real life. Quiet life. Life that is actually yours. Last spring I went back to the university I never finished. Not to prove anything. Just because I wanted to. I enrolled in 2 evening courses in business strategy and I sat in those classrooms with people half my age and I loved every single minute of it. Not because I needed the credential. Because I had spent 12 years being told I couldn't, and I wanted to know what it felt like to simply choose to. It felt like everything. The day I received my first marks back, I sat in my car in the campus car park and I thought about that 20-year-old who had packed a suitcase and driven to Boston with $2,000 and absolutely no certainty that things would be okay. I wish I could go back and tell her. Not what would happen, not all the specific details, just one simple thing. You are going to be fine. More than fine. You are going to build something that makes you proud to wake up in the morning. And the people who told you that you couldn't, one day they are going to know your name in a way that has nothing to do with your relationship to them. Hold on. Keep going. You've got this. Thank you for listening to my story. All the way to the end. If you made it here, that genuinely means something to me, and I do not say that lightly. This was not a simple story to tell, and I know it was not always a comfortable one to hear. But if any part of it reached you, if it stirred something, if it made you think about your own boundaries or your own worth or the people in your life who have never properly seen you, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment. Tell me your story. You are not alone in this, and you never were. Subscribe if you want more honest stories like this one. Stories about people who were told they were not enough and decided to become everything anyway. Until next time. My name is Claire Evans. And I am finally, completely, irreversibly free.